Hello students, today is another period of our subject social studies. Social studies. And I'm your teacher, Pastor Nwakanma Anthony. Previously, we have looked at the definition of social studies, and we have also looked at the physical environment and the social environment, and then we also looked at environmental problems, pollutions, and what have you. And then in our last lecture, we looked at some social problems, or what we call contemporary social issues. And we looked at, problems like HIV/AIDS, cultism in the society, prostitution, armed robbery, and then of course the current COVID-19. And then we did a case study of exam or examination malpractice. We looked at the nature of exam malpractices. We looked at the causes of examination malpractice. And then we looked at the effects and, of course, the solutions. And I'm sure you have done your various assignments. I want to say that I am really happy with your efforts in sending in your assignments, and we have been looking at them, and I want to believe that you are doing well, so keep it up. So can you give yourself a wonderful round of applause? Very good. So today we want to look at another aspect of social studies titled culture. Culture. I'm sure we are all very familiar with the word culture. At the end of this topic, the student would be expected to understand the concept of culture. The student will be expected to understand the concept of culture. The student will also be able to understand the components of culture. Then number 3, the student will also be acquainted with the characteristics of culture. Also, the student will also be able to, understand the similarities in cultures. And then lastly, also understand the differences in culture. So this is what these are the things the student will be expected to know or understand at the end of this lecture. The concept of culture, the components of culture, The student must also be acquainted with the characteristics of culture, then understand the similarities in cultures, and then understand the differences in the various cultures. So let's quickly look at the first one, which is the concept. The concept of culture. The concept of culture. Now, what do we understand by culture? Nnamdi, can you quickly give us an idea? I'm sure you know what is culture. You have heard of culture before. So, Nnamdi, can you tell us what you understand by culture? Wow, great. Nnamdi says culture is the way of life of a people. Can we put our hands together for Nnamdi? That's a very good attempt. Beautiful. Now, Mary, can you give us your own idea? I know you have an idea too. Okay, Mary says that is the way people behave and do their things. That's another good example. So quickly, we can combine so many of these ideas and definitions. But we must understand that there is somebody that introduced this concept of culture. An English anthropologist by the name Edward Taylor. Edward Taylor in 1871, Edward Taylor in 1871 introduced the concept of what? Of culture. And what did he say culture is? He said culture is the totality of the way of life of a people. I hope you got that. Culture is what? The totality of the way of life of what? A people. In other words, everything about a people can be summed up as their culture. So we can say that the culture is the relationships, that people form or establish at a particular time. Such relationships as what? Dancing, religion, their beliefs, their entertainment, their folklores, everything they do. The relationship established by what? A people can be seen as what? Their culture. Culture can also be seen as what people do. In other words, how they do their work, how they do their farming, how they interact. All these things can be said to be what? Culture. How they produce their food. How they, govern themselves. All these are what? Culture. Now, it is also important to know that culture cannot exist without the society. Did you understand that? Culture cannot exist in a vacuum. In other words, there must be a society. There must be a group of people in which culture must operate. So culture cannot exist without a society. And also, there is no society that can exist without what? A culture. So they work hand in hand. And then we also want to say that every society has its own culture. Every society in the world have their different cultures. So you might come to my society or my community or my village and you find out the things we do not agree with your own. That does not mean that yours is superior to mine, or that mine is what? Superior to yours. For example, if you go to Abuja, you know, the owners of Abuja, I think they call them the Gwari people. Now, if you go to that area, the Gwari people, you will never see a Gwari man or woman carry any load on their heads. No matter how heavy that load is. Where will they carry it? They will always put it on their shoulders. Now, Chike, can you give me an idea why the Gwari people put load on their shoulders? Yes, Chike is very correct. He says because the Gwari people believe that their head is what? Sacrosanct, or their head is revered. You know, so carrying load on their head will be like defiling themselves, or it's like an abomination. They revere their heads. So the Gwari man or the Gwari woman will, no matter how heavy that load is, will never put it on their head. Now, but in your place, you can easily carry a bucket of water on your head. You can easily carry firewood on your head when you are coming from the bush. Now, so these are differences. So, but we will also understand that even though there are differences in culture, there are also similarities. We shall be looking at this later. That though there are various differences in culture, there are also what? Similarities. There are similarities in culture. In other words, you can go to a particular culture and you see exactly the same thing that operates in other cultures. So quickly, we want to look at the second one now, which is what? The components. Components of culture. The components of what? Culture. Now, what do we mean by components of culture? It simply means the things that you can, you know, compartmentalize culture into. And then in this situation, you find out that culture can be compartmentalized into two divisions. One, you have what? The material. You have the material culture. We have what? The material culture. Then, two, we have the non-material culture. So we say we have culture compartmentalized into two, the material and the non-material culture. So quickly, what do we understand by the material culture? What do we understand by material culture? Now, material culture consists of those things that exist in the society which we can see, which we can feel, which we can do what? We can touch. What are those things? Talk of pots, talk of tables, talk of knives, you talk of hoes, you talk of books, plates, so many things that you can see. Your bucket, everything you can feel and touch are what? Material cultures. Now, so you see that in material culture, they are primarily made up of things that men produce with their hands. So anything you can feel or touch is a material culture. Like this pen I'm holding in my hand is part of material culture. The board on which I'm writing is part of material culture. I'm sure you are sitting down on a seat and writing on a table as you are listening to this lesson. You are sitting on the material culture, you are writing on the material culture. So material culture consists of those things that are made by man. Now, what of the non-material culture? The non-material culture. Non-material. The non-material culture. Now, the non-material culture will simply mean those things, that we cannot see. Those things that we cannot touch. They are intangible. They are things, that have been transmitted to us from one generation to another. They were not created by us. We met them. Such things as what? Our languages that we speak, our languages, folklore, our languages, our folklore, our religion, our literature, government, and what have you? Our value system, our norms, our traditions. Those are what? Non-material culture. We cannot feel them, we cannot see them, we cannot touch them, but we know that they do what? They exist. And then these things are passed from one generation to the other. For example, the socialization process. You grow into a community and you realize that as a young boy, each time you see your elder, you must do what? Bow down to do what? To greet him. That is non-material culture. You see that each time you finish eating, you must say thank you to your host. If you have offended somebody, you must say what? I am sorry. And then you must know that in a culture that you must be disciplined. You must know that you're not supposed to steal. You must know that you're not supposed to do what? Abuse your elder. All these are value systems. All these are norms. All these are things that you should know. Not because you can touch them, not because you can see them, but because they exist. And they were passed down to you by your predecessors. So they are called what? The non-material culture. Now quickly, let's get to the third point. To the third point of culture, which is what? The characteristics. Of culture. The characteristics of what? Culture. Now, what do we mean by characteristics? Simply means the qualities. The qualities of what? Culture. What are the things that we will see and we say, oh, this is part of a culture of what? A people. The qualities of a culture. One, culture is what? Culture is stable. Is what? Stable. Now, what do we mean by stable? Chinonso, what do you mean by stable? Oh, beautiful. Can we put our hands together for Chinonso? Chinonso says stable means, not easily change. In other words, relatively permanent. That is beautiful. So culture does not easily change. You cannot say this year, 2020, our culture is that we must greet our elders. But we know that by 2021, our culture may change. So we may not greet our elders. No, culture is not that way. Culture, takes a long time. It passes through a long period, and then you can look at the people and say, their culture have existed for thousands of what? Of years. So culture is stable. Now, 2 again, culture is what? Is learned. Is what? Learned. In other words, it is not genetically transmitted. It is not what? Genetically transmitted. Culture is learned. I tell students, I said, if we do a mental experiment, and a child is born today, and you take that child to an isolated, I'm sure many of us are conversant with isolation centers because of COVID-19. Now, but you take the child to an isolated place where the child does not interact with anybody, no communication, nothing. Probably the only thing is that you find a way of making sure the child feeds every day, but no communication. Now, eventually, if this child grows to like 15 years, 20 years, remaining in that environment where he or she is alone, isolated, can somebody tell me the language that that child will speak? Okay, Emeka, can you tell me? Emeka said the child will be saying, okay, can you see that? Why? Because the child has not learned any language. There is something called tabula rasa. Tabula rasa. Tabula rasa. Now, tabula rasa in sociology is like a clean slate, like this board. If I should wipe out everything on this board now, this board will be pure white, plain. It's a tabula rasa. Now, what it means is that the mind of the child is like this, is blank. So, as a result of socialization, the child begins to have an impression on that tabula rasa. Now, that is why if you born a child in an Igbo parents give birth to a child in a Yoruba-dominated enclave, what language will the baby speak? Yoruba. Because the Yoruba culture is what that child will experience. So what it means is that culture is not genetic. You will not say because we are Igbos, then all the children we give birth to, even if we are in Hausa land, must speak Igbo and must behave like Igbos. No. If you didn't teach them Igbo, they will end up behaving like the Hausa people. So culture is learned. Then culture is dynamic. Culture is what? Dynamic. Culture is dynamic. Now, what does that mean? In as much as we said here that culture is stable, relatively permanent, relatively, unchanged for a long time. But we also understand that culture is dynamic. Culture develops. Culture moves from stage to stage. You might say, why am I saying this? Of course, sometimes when I see twins today, I tell them, I said, if you don't know the prayer point to pray, always thank your God. They say, why? I said, because you were not born maybe in the 17th or 16th century. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Because at those periods, our society will not want to welcome twins. Twins were born, they will be thrown into the evil forest. But who stopped the killing of twins? Who can tell us? Amaka, can you tell us who stopped the killing of twins? Wow! Amaka said Mary Slessor. Can we put our hands together for her? Great. So, Mary Slessor stopped the killing of what? Of twins. And so today, everybody is happy to see twins. In fact, if you are married today, you'll be praying that if only you could have twins. Some people have even had, triplets, quadruplets, and sometimes, 7. Today, people are happy with twins. So you see that culture is gone. That culture is abolished. There are cultures of, female genital mutilation, which is called female circumcision. In those days, both men and women were circumcised. But today, it's an aberration to circumcise a woman. So there are many cultures that have gone. Science and technology has also improved our cultures. Before now, you can trek from here to Lagos or from here to wherever. But today, you can enter fast-moving vehicles. Things are changing. So culture is what? Is dynamic. Then we also say that culture is transmitted from generation to generation. From generation to what? Generation. The cultures that you practice today must have started from your great-great-grandfathers. And today, you are still maintaining the same culture. For example, in your village today, there are areas you must not marry from. They will tell you, that community you're going to, we have blood relationship with them. But you find out that the place is very far from. You say, why can't I go and marry? I say, no, you can't. Why? Because maybe your great-grandfather and their great-grandfather was from the same family. And so, if you marry from that family, you would have committed what is called what? Incest. So, you see that such ideas were transmitted from generation to generation. We also say that culture is unique. Culture is what? Unique. What do you mean by unique? It means that every society have their peculiar culture. You may find out that your culture and the culture of the other man does not agree. Now, but that does not make you think your own culture is the best. Let me ask us a question. When you feel that your culture is the best culture in the world, what do they call you? What will you be referred to as? Okay, can you tell us? Where you think your own culture is the best and everybody must dance to your culture. Okay, tell us. What are you called in social studies? Wow! Eke says you are called what? An ethnocentric. Wow, that's good. Ethnocentric. Ethnocentric. Centric. So the act of thinking that your culture is the best is called what? Ethnocentrism. So where you think that your culture is the best is called what? Ethnocentrism. And it's not good because it means you cannot fit into other people's culture. Then we also say that culture also has material and non-material what? Aspects, which we have just treated. That every culture must have its what? Material and non-material aspect. Of course, we have already looked at the material culture and the non-material culture. And then we also say that culture cannot exist without society, and vice versa. Culture cannot exist without society and vice versa. Now, what that means is that society can also not exist without culture. Now, so these are some of the characteristics of culture, the things that you can see and you notice that they are what? They are culture. Now, quickly, I want us to look at, we said that in as much as there are different cultures in Nigeria, there are also cultural similarities. There are what? Cultural similarities. I want to start by saying that there are about 250 ethnic groups or above, over 250 ethnic groups. Now, so what it means that these 250 ethnic groups also have what? Different cultures. They have different cultures. But in the midst of all these different cultures, there are also similarities. So we want to quickly look at some of the similarities. One is the marriage institution. Now, every culture has a formal way of, bringing together the opposite sex to form a legitimate relationship. I have not really heard of a culture where the moment you think you qualify to get married, you grab a woman and you begin to live with her and automatically you are married. No, there must be some formal processes. And then we also know that in every culture, family is very, very important. Everybody strives to be a member of what? A family. Because the family is the unit of what? The society. So, marriage institution is common to all societies. Then we also talk about what? Religious institution. Religious institution. Every society have their various forms of, like in Nigeria, we have the three main types of religion. What are they? The traditional, the Christian religion, and then the Islamic religion. So in any society, you must find any of these or even the three religions together. Now, if you look at these religions, though they differ in mode of worship, or beliefs, but primarily their function is what? The same. The function of religion is what? The same. And what is that function? To raise a high level of moral standard, for the society. Then we also have the aspect of what? Traditional institutions. This is common too in various society. Like, you have the Oba of Benin, you have the Emirs in the north, you have the Ezes in the southeast, you have the Shekiri of of the Jos, and what have you, the Jaja of Opobo, Nana of Ishekiri, Obi of Onisha. Various societies have their traditional institutions, their chieftaincy system. And everybody is expected to, obey, and respect these traditional institutions. Also, we know that in every society, the farming is also, common. This is the primary source of life for every society. There is no society you come and they don't engage in farming. And if you look at the various farming implements in the society, you find that there's also a common strand. You find what? The hoes. You find the hoes, the cutlasses, the shovels, and so on. So these are common agricultural implements common to all men. Then, like we also say that in various societies, dances and music are what? Common. There is no society that does not love entertainment, both the traditional and modern. All Nigerians love music. All Nigerians love entertainment. And so, if you go to the various villages, you will see what is called, the tales by moonlight, where in the evening, the children come together and tell stories, folklores, and the auntie sings for the children, and moonlight. I think even the national television has a program called, Tales by Moonlight. How many of you have watched it? Okay, great. That's beautiful. It's still showing in some stations. We love music. And from time to time, you will see a musician will come out with a wonderful tune, and it will become the order of the day. And sometimes you will see everybody singing. Why? Because that music has become very popular. Now, even among the various religious groups, the common thing that is known for this group is what? The method of music. There are some people, why they are in love with a particular sect or a particular religion, a particular denomination, is because of the style of their music. And so, music is part and parcel of life. Somebody says, if music is the fruit of love, then do what? Play on. If music is the fruit of love, a philosopher says, play on. So you now see that entertainment and music is part of every society. I don't know if there is any society you will go to and they tell you in this society music is not allowed. And everybody, of course, if you go to such a society, you will find that you will not find happy people there. Why? Because there is no provision for entertainment. There is no provision for leisure. So it is important to know that dances and music are very, very peculiar and, part and parcel of different societies. Then another aspect that is common among societies is respect. Respect for elders. Respect for what? For elders. This is very, very common in every society. For example, if you go to the north and you see a young Hausa boy meet an elder, maybe an Alhaji, what will he do? He will quickly, bend his knees and greet the elder. And what the Yorubas, what will they do? They will simply lie down on the floor to greet. And of course, if you come to the Igbo land, the young man will also bow down to greet his elder. So, respect for elders is common in every society. Now, so if you see a young man that does not respect his elders, it means that something is abnormal with that young man or that young boy, because it is part of culture. It is part of the value system. It is part of the discipline that every child must respect their elder. That is why when you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing you do? Ah, daddy, good morning, sir. Mommy, good morning. And you greet uncles, greet every, elder around before you start the day's chores. Now, so this is part and parcel of what? Our society. And it is common. There is no society you will go to and they tell you that the youngsters there are arrogant or disobedient to their elders. And that is the norm of the society. There won't be any society like that. Now, lastly, on that point too, is traditional education. Traditional education. Traditional education. Now, what do we mean by traditional education? Now, prior to the introduction of Western education, we had a method of education. Of course, we call it what? Informal education. We had a way of training our youth. We had a way of, inculcating into the youth the moral value of the society. We had a way of socializing the young ones so that they can become responsible adults. There may not have been classrooms, there may not have been chalks, there may not have been pencils, but then the children were tutored in such a way that they learned by what? By association, through the age grade system, through the peer groups, through moral standards, through the various traditional, religions and morality. Now, so you see that prior to this Western education, the various traditional societies had what? Their method of education. So there is no society that did not have a method of educating their young ones even before the colonial masters came in. And the colonial masters, even when they brought Western education, also knew that they didn't need to do away completely with the traditional method. So they inculcated part of it, made people to learn. They made you to learn part of your culture as what? Part of the Western education. That is why you can still see your teachers today teaching you Igbo language, so that you will not forget your cultures. Now, finally, we want to look at, having examined the cultural similarities, we also need to look at the cultural differences. In as much as we have similarities in culture, we also have cultural differences. Cultural differences. Now, what are some of the cultural differences? Of course, here we have our languages. Our languages differ. Our languages do what? Differ. It is said that in Nigeria we have over 52 languages. Over 52 languages. So you find that even in a particular state, you might have up to 3 or 4 variances in that society or that state as regards language. So you can go to the Yoruba land. If you don't speak Yoruba, you may not be able to fit into the society, except probably they speak English too. So every society have their languages. And we know that in Nigeria, we have just 3 major languages. We have the Igbo, we have the Hausa, we have the Yoruba. Now, these are the 3 major languages. But beyond these 3, we also have other languages, such as what? The Fulani, the Birom, the Gwari, Urobo, Nupe, Kanuri, Fulfulde, Igala, Angas, Efik, Ibibio, and so many. So we have languages as diverse as what? The cultures. So in Nigeria, there are various languages that differ from society to society. Then secondly, too, our religious worship. Religious worship also differ. Our religious worship differ. Like we pointed earlier, that there are 3 major religions in Nigeria. Now let's take Christianity for example. You will see that the Christians worship where? In churches. So they build their church and they have their clergy. They have their priests, they have their pastors, they have their reverend fathers, they have their elders. Now, so that is Christianity. And their mode of worship is peculiar to them. They believe in the Almighty God, and they believe that He has His own begotten Son, Jesus Christ, who came to save the world. And the Bible makes us to understand that there is no name given by which any man can be saved except the name of Jesus Christ. Why? Because He says at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow. Every tongue shall confess that Jesus is what? The Lord. So we believe in Jesus. We believe that He is the Savior of the world. The Christians believe that man sinned and that man cannot help himself. And that the only way man can be saved is through faith in Jesus Christ. So which means that every effort you make, everything you present to God as a means of righteousness cannot avail you except you do what? You trust Jesus. You believe in Jesus. And how do you believe in Jesus? Christianity teaches that you must do what? Confess your sins. There's a passage in Proverbs 28 verse 13. It says, if any man hide his sin, he shall not prosper. But that if you confess your sins and forsake them, you will do what? Obtain mercy. So the moment the mercy of God is with you, you have the confidence that you are a child of God. The blessings of God will follow you. And when you die, you will do what? You will make heaven. And the Christian method also teaches that sin is the only thing that can hinder a man from seeing God. If you look at Isaiah 59 verses 1 and 2, it says the hands of God are not shortened that he cannot save. He says his ears are not deaf that he cannot hear. But he says your sin have separated between you and God. So sin separates a man from God. And so if you remain in sin, you will be completely separated, delineated from God. The life of God will not be in you. The blessings of God will not locate you. But like 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn away from their iniquity, say, I will hear them from heaven, I will forgive their sins, and I will do what? Heal their land. Oh, what a wonderful promise. So these are the things that we see in Christianity. And that is the joy that a man has that he is saved. While Islam believes that there is Allah, and they believe that Prophet Muhammad is what? His messenger. Of course, they worship in what? In the mosque. And the traditional religionists will worship where? In the shrine. Offering sacrifices, and doing so many other things. So, ways of religion, and then ways of greeting also differ. Like we pointed before, the ways of greeting differ. Ways of greeting differ. We have stated this before. That in the north, you see the young man, he will prostrate and kneel down, while the Yoruba will lie prostrate on the floor, what we call the ballet. And then the young Igbo man will also bow down to greet his elder. So Every tribe have their way of greeting. We also have differences in what? The hairstyle. Hairstyle, our hairstyle, especially for the women. You know, if you see a typical Igbo lady, the way she plaits her hair, you know, the natural African system, you know, using the thread to tie it. And if you see somebody from the north, the way they use their hair, the Kanuris, you can easily look at the hairstyle and say, this person is from this part. So the hairstyle also differ. Then we also have what? The marriage ceremonies. The marriage what? Ceremonies. Of course, people say that in the East, the bride price is so high. If you plan to marry in the East, you must be ready to pump in so much money. You know, buy tubers of yam, buy clothes for the mother-in-law, maybe spending up to 500 or even $1 million. You know, but there are some societies, what you just need to do is, you know, make your intention known and just deposit a small amount of money the lady is giving to you, and you have their blessings. You know, so marriage ceremony differ. Then the occupations and products also differ. Occupation and products differ. What do you mean by this? You know, the society, the terrain or weather of the society affects the occupation of that society. Like, you know, people from the riverine areas of the south, many of them, what do? They are fishermen. They are boat builders. You know, that is primarily, and then from the east, what do you have? Where you have the rainforest, many people are also, you know, into forestry. You know, logging of wood and timber, you know. But in the north, where the vegetation is low and the rain is not really high, the people do not engage so much in fishing. Rather, they engage in what? In farming. They engage in cattle rearing. So, you see, occupation also differ. And the products, what they produce, also differ. Then, you also talk about what? Mode of dressing. Mode of dressing. Great. Mode of dressing. If you find a typical Hausa man, he will wear the clothes they call what? The Baba Riga. You know, the Baba Riga, where he will, you know, and wear his cap. You know, but the Igbo man will do what? Wear his Isiago. You know that cloth they call Isiago, and the red cap, especially for the titled men. And of course, for the Yorubas, they also wear their Yoruba attire that easily typifies them, you know, for who they are. Mode of dressing. Then the type of food we eat also differ. The type of what? Type of food. Type of food. Like if you're from the east here, you know that we love fufu, you know, apple, very well. That gives us power and energy. You know, we like the ofoha, we like the ofogo, you know, we like the achara. You know, it's so many of the wonderful food we have here. So, but if you go to Yoruba land, what do you find? You also find the own peculiar type of food. You find the wedu and the amala. You know, while if you go to the north, you find the 201k, the dawa, and kuka, and what have you. So, these food differ. And you don't say, because we eat fufu here, then what they are eating there is rubbish. No, they are also comfortable with their own food. Then lastly, the type of what? Housing. Type of what? Housing. Housing. If you go to the north, you will notice, especially places like Kano, what kind of house do you see? Houses with what? Flat roofs. Flat roofs. Now, what is the implication of that? It shows you that they don't expect much rain. So, they don't have problems with rain. But if you come to the southeast, we build our houses in what we normally call send down the rain. Why? Because we have heavy downpour. If you build such houses in the southeast, the rain will cave in the your roof because of the way you built it. So you see that the various accommodation or houses we build also is determined by our society, the style of our houses. So far, these are a few of the things we need to learn in culture. We started by saying that culture is the totality of the way of life of what? Of a people. And we say that there are what? Two components of culture, the material and the non-material culture. And we looked at the characteristics of what? Of culture. We also looked at the similarities of culture and the differences in culture. So these are the things that we need to know about culture. And what we have just done today is not exhaustive. So I still expect you to go and read further, and you will get wonderful and valuable idea about culture. But quickly, I want you to take down this assignment. One, what do you understand by culture? Then two, state and briefly explain the components of and three, state three similarities of culture in Nigeria. And then finally, state three differences of culture in Nigeria. Here we come to the end of today's lecture, and I hope you're taking adequate precaution against the pandemic, COVID-19. Stay fine, stay safe until we meet again. I am your teacher, Pastor Nwakanma Anthony. God bless you.